much to talk about except for one thing, and I don't know if she's watching now. I hope she is. Caryn Belikoff sent me something, and it actually arrived quite a while ago. I just didn't get a chance to get it open yet. We had just a bunch of boxes and stuff, and somehow it got buried. But Caryn, I don't know if you're watching right now. This is one of the sweetest things anyone's ever sent me. It's a portrait of my cat Texas. Based on a picture I think I had online. But I mean, really, that is one of the sweetest, nicest things that anyone's ever sent me. It's an absolutely fantastic drawing, Caryn. And I'll tell you what's especially touching about this. Tex died in 2010. And because of that, he went just before smartphones came out, certainly just before I got mine. So even though I lost Reno last year, I have hundreds of pictures of him, very few of Texas, and that is just so lovely. That's going right in my bedroom, I think, or certainly going to be someplace where I can see it every day. I do miss that cat very much, and it's a sweet picture of the guy. I know he looks like a watermelon, but he was just a super, super, super little dude. And Caryn, that was as unexpected as anything I've ever gotten, and I'm as grateful for anything as I am for anything I've ever gotten to. Thank you so much for that. It was very, very thoughtful, and it's beautifully executed, beautifully drawn. And I don't know if you're watching this, but if you are, I can't thank you enough for that. It brings back a lot of great memories, and he was just a neat little dude. So thank you again very much for that. Anyway, let's get rolling here. I got a bunch of good questions as usual. Something about this mic is just exactly the wrong place today. Okay, here we go. For 126. We'll start off with Chris Taylor. I did these mostly in order of ranking. So Chris Taylor says, chivalry meant boys were expected to make frequent small sacrifices for the benefit of the weaker sex. When almost all positions of authority went to men, that meant that almost all leaders had, from childhood, daily exposure to the idea of power coming with responsibilities to the less powerful. Now that women are frequently in and abusing positions of power, how should chivalry be reinvented so that they too will have the ideas of honor and leadership responsibility drilled into them from childhood? It's a very interesting question, and I think you can probably just sort of boil that down to what is the new chivalry and what does it look like? And I have to tell you, this is just my opinion, but that's why we have the show. Chris, I think the new chivalry has to look exactly like the old chivalry, because chivalry wasn't based on power relationships. It was based on biology, and the biology hasn't changed. So it's just that simple, I think. I've been working for many women, worked for women for 10, 15 years, I guess, women bosses in show business, and some of them are good and some of them are not good. But really, it just really does come down to biology. Obviously, the initial case of opening doors for women was because, men are considerably stronger than women, and we didn't want them to, sprain their delicate little wrists or get their dresses caught in the closing door, and all those other reasons that seem to have a date on them as if it was something that happened in the past. I don't think anybody really, for a second, believes that women can't open their own car doors or can't open their own doors to restaurants. I don't think anybody thinks that they're not capable of scooting their chair up to a table in a restaurant either. But I don't think that's really the point. I think the point is it's a gesture of concern, and it's hard to, I'm sure they exist, it's hard to imagine real D-bags who are doing things like that, like consistently getting the car door, consistently getting the restaurant chair, and opening doors and getting in front of people, especially walking on the street side of the sidewalk. That's a habit I've just been in my whole life, and I can't tell you the number of women who have just said nobody does that anymore. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I don't know how many women that would be. I've been on a few dates. I want to say about 65,000, something like that. And yeah, and it's greatly appreciated. Really, when you get right down to it, modern chivalry. In previous times, you really did need to have a guy with a club, making sure that the rooms are okay and helping people up. And mud was being splattered everywhere, and we don't have that problem too much anymore with horse-drawn carriages and all the rest. So basically, what the chivalry is, it's essentially a token of respect, and it's a token of attention and real concern. It's a token of affection, really, when you get right down to it. So I don't think that a new chivalry is going to be based on the fact that the power relationships have changed, because they have changed. I perfectly happy to work for women. Needless to say, I've been doing it for many years. I'm very uncomfortable if a woman holds a door for me. It goes to a trouble, and it just simply would not happen that I'd let her open my car door for me. It's just no, it's just not how it works. Needless to say, you don't have to do it, and needless to say, the need for it is probably decreased, and also needless to say, there's a lot more pushback, because a lot of women see this as patronizing, or as a man gets a door for a woman. They seem to think that the man thinks that they're not capable of opening the door, maybe not strong enough, or whatever. Those people are pretty neurotic, and they all live out here in Los Angeles. The unwillingness to accept that says an awful lot about you, and again, it comes down to the traditional roles of the biology. It is a sign of respect for women, and it's also a sign of what's the word I'm looking for here? This is a tough one. It's certainly not submission. It's not. It's like the whole chivalry thing is in fact like a bow, which was part of chivalry. You would bow. Bowing doesn't mean that you're the person's servant. It just is a sign of respect, and it's a visible sign of respect. And I feel sorry for these millennials for so many reasons, and I think that's one of the ones I feel the most sorry for them for. It's just very sad that they don't experience it. I think the young women miss it without knowing they miss it. I think the young men miss it without knowing they miss it. Somebody just pointed out there. Let me see. I want to get the name. I always try to get the name if I can do it. Yes, Rich B313 says basically what I've been trying to say this whole time. And that basically it's a sign. It comes from times when men had to be genuinely defending women. They'd go into a room first because there's more of a threat that way, and that's why they would get the door, and the door would be heavy, and they put themselves between women in danger, because if a car jumps the curb, or at the very least if mud is splattered, you want to protect women. I never liked the term the weaker sex, because I never really believed it was the weaker sex. It's certainly a different sex, and it's weaker physically, and it's stronger in many ways emotionally, and the balance between these two things has always really impressed me. You would think, certainly in many animal species, one sex, usually the male, but not always, is bigger than the female, and bigger and better at everything. But here, we have men are better at spatial recognition, women are better at facial recognition. Men, I think, stand cold better, or women stand heat better, or vice versa. I can't remember. Men have better vision, women have better hearing, something like that. It's just, you go right down the list, and it's just this, check boxes. And it's lovely. And you can, of course, pretend that doesn't exist, and you're certainly welcome to. In my world, I'm not going to enforce chivalry on anybody. But I do remember reading one thing not too long ago about a woman who, I want to say it's about 5-6 months ago, and there's one of these Tempest in a Teapot kind of things where this woman wrote an article about traveling on an aircraft, and she asked a man to help her put her bag up into the overhead compartment, and then was outraged that he had the audacity to ask her for her phone number. And she basically saying, can't you just be pack horses and leave us alone? And I think you know, I think the response to that was really appropriate. It's like, uh, you may say that guy has no right to hit on you, but you've got no right to ask him to help you with your bag. And I think the people that get really torqued about this kind of thing really are not very happy with the whole thing. Look, I've known a lot of people over my life, and the people I've known have changed considerably over my life. I knew a whole different type of people earlier, and I know a much better group of people now. And my experience has been clearly that the conservatives are much happier people than liberals, and the people, men and women who are comfortable with the equality of the differences, are much happier than people that like to pretend these differences don't exist. So, just to close your question, Chris, even though the power relationships are different, the biology isn't, and I've always felt that was the essence of what chivalry is.